everyone, welcome to our YouTube channel. The following video is part of our weekly masterclass led by industry experts who will guide you through the latest tech trends and skills. Don't forget to check the link to more such videos in the description.
Yeah, so there are people who are as fresher, there are people who are certainly experienced and want to jump into a different field, want to make the career transition, right? So I guess whenever you are thinking in that direction for a career transition, certainly things are required, right? You need to work upon, you need to upskill. Now that is the common thing we heard about the upskilling, right? But it is necessary to know exactly, right? Like how to upskill in a certain field or what field are you exactly targeting, right? So data analyst is one of those profiles that you can certainly target, right? When you're coming from a non-tech background and you want to uh, have knowledge of the things, right? Like what will be important for transitioning into data analyst role. So we'll be going step by step. We'll be understanding like exactly what is data analyst role, right? And then what is the required skill set you need to have. And then at last, we'll also be going through what your resume need to have, right? Like one of the thing is definitely upskilling, but the second thing that is most important is to present that, right? How to exactly present that in your resume, what to exactly write down, what is the appropriate skill set along with the projects you can work upon so that you can correctly justify that you have the appropriate experience so as to make that career transition, right? So when we talk about data analyst, right, like exactly what is data analyst? So we know like information is available to us in many sources, right? You go on a World Wide Web and there are so many information available. You have Google with you now. You search for a specific thing. There is so many sources of information. So the information is available to us. It is us as people who wants to utilize that information, right? And you have to utilize the information in the right way. Okay. So for any problem statement, the crux or the main source or the main important thing is actually to get down the data, to get down the related data for the problem statement, so as you can have a crack at that problem, right? Now, how will you land up further depends upon the data and different aspects, right? The quality of the data, the quantity of the data. But the first thing that is foremost important is exactly you need to have the data. Now, what is data? We have talked about the different sources of information that we have. The first thing, right? You have seen like people going and asking for service, right? Whenever you visit shopping malls or you are visiting at stores, right? People are collecting down your information. Now, some of them, some of you does not have any problem in sharing down the information, but some have exactly, right? So these are the surveys where your information is gathered down, right? Maybe your IDs, maybe your numbers, maybe your experience with the stores, maybe those feedbacks. But we do not understand how important is that feedback that you are giving down to stores, right? Because at the end, all of the data is cumulated and analyzed so as to get the direction that how satisfied are the customers, right? So the service conducted, the data recording that usually happens whenever you are registering at certain events, all those information is cumulated, and that is the source of the data for many cracking down many problem statement or cracking down many different metrics, right? If I talk about a technical store, if I talk about a store, right, you're visiting down a shopping mall, right? Whatever data they have collected from your experiences, right? They can have certain metrics, right? Now, these all of the things are related to data analysts. Data analysts are the persons who are actually analyzing large amount of humongous amount of data. It's not about maybe 20 to 30 customers. I'm talking in million and billion, right? This is the source of the data that nowadays organization have, and they are analyzing. They are analyzing to get the direction, okay, in which direction they have to move, or which the metric they want to target, right? Because every year they have certain metrics to target, and that metrics is coming down from the data that is getting recorded. So that's why we say that data is actually the source of truth, or the source of information that can lead to solving down different problems, right? So we are talking about the data analyst, right? So data analyst roles involves or revolves around collecting, processing, and performing statistical analysis on large data sets. Now, large data sets I've already explained you, like the humongous amount of data that we are talking about, right? Now, what do you mean by collecting, processing, and performing statistical analysis? Now, some of the key points where we will go on and have a look at it, right? Like how exactly these points are related to the data analyst role. And the first and the foremost point is the data collection and cleaning. We'll be going in very detail in each of the slide from one step to another, but at an outset, you understand, right? Data collection and cleaning. Now, data collection is exactly collecting down the data. Now, why you need to collect the data? You need to collect the data in order to analyze it. But yes, before analyzing, you need to have the data. Now, data can be available in various forms. What I mean by various form is as like some of the data maybe is in your Excel file, right? You have accumulated down the data. Some of the data is manually written down. So you have to collect the data from different sources, right? So suppose there is I was talking about a shopping mall store. So now let's consider brand A. It had different outlets, right? Now the outlets is situated at different stores, right? One of the store is in Mumbai, one of the store is in Delhi, one of the store is in Bangalore. You have to collect the data from the different sources, right? So all of the stores will have its respective data stored down somewhere. So to pull down the data and accumulate down the whole data. So as to get down the complete data for the overall analysis. So that is where the data collection is important. Now, the second thing we talk about is the cleaning. Now, cleaning is simply, we'll be going through many of the things that are involved in cleaning, but from an outset, what cleaning means is actually refining the data, so as you can consume down the data in the correct form, right? Now, second, we talk about the data analysis. Now, what do you mean by data analysis? This is the main thing. Like as soon as you have collected down the data, the most important step is analyzing down the data, right? You have to analyze the data in a form that, okay, if you are looking for a certain metric, right? If you're looking for a customer satisfaction rate, right? What you will do is you have collected down the data. Now, every customer, whenever he visits down a store, he has given certain ratings, right? Okay, I like the shopping experience or the satisfaction level. You accumulate down the data and then you analyze and report down a certain figure. Okay, what is the customer satisfaction rate? Okay, what is the recommendation customers are giving? How positive or how negative are they? Because we've seen these things, right? Every one of us are aware about when I talk about positive or negative. I'm talking about the sentiment. Okay, when you're writing down your customer experience, every statement has a sentiment associated to it. Whether you will have a good experience, you will write down excellent, good. You will not have a very good experience at the store. You will route down terrible, awful, not good, all of these terms. So from all of these terms, we can exactly calculate the sentiment of particular customer, and then we can calculate the overall sentiment. So this is one of the key aspects, right? How the data analysis happen, right? Now we have the data, but we need to analyze the data in the correct form to actually figure out the right metric for us, right? So in this way, you can analyze down the data, and this is just one of the examples. There are so much to this that you can analyze down the data and you can picturize the data in the form that can actually be useful, right? The third thing is reporting. Now, this is very important, guys, right? Nowadays, we all of us see these dashboards, we see the charts, we see the figures representation, right? Now, these actually look very beautiful, but it has actually come down from the source of the data that we have. We had a lot of data, and from that data, we have accumulated down the data, we have analyzed the data, and we have picturized the data in the form. Now, it is very important. Why? Because the more intuitive that would be, the more leading figures you can get. What do I mean by leading figures? What do I mean by metrics, right? So if there is a pie chart, right, and if we are talking about the customer satisfaction rate, either I write down the customer satisfaction rate or I actually illustrate that in the form of pie chart. What will be useful for you, right? A figure getting displayed, right? So that is how important reporting becomes, right? Because for the end user or for the end customer, what is important is they want to directly see the metric. They are not involved actually in processing down, collecting down the data. The more they are concerned about is what is the figure. Okay, what is the customer satisfaction rate you are getting? What is the overall experience? What is the overall sentiment? So this is how the dashboards are presented. Dashboards are actually a result of data analysis that has been done in the background, right? So reporting becomes very important because reporting can be the final reports that you generate, the Excel kinds of report, right? or it can be the dashboards that are presented with those reports in form of illustrative figures or bar graphs or line charts, actually showing down the trend or the figures. And that is very easy to understand. Why dashboards are important? Because they are quite easy to understand. You may have gone through n numbers of dashboards on just internet, right? They are very easy or intuitive to understand from the end customer experience. That's why reporting becomes, again, one of the most important key points in the data analyst role. Now, fourth is data management. You need to manage the data, right? If you have such kind of data, you need to manage the data. And how could you manage the data? If you have the right knowledge about how to actually store down the data in the correct form, right? So data management, again, is very important in data analyst role. And then the lastly but not the least, that is the collaboration. Now, collaboration, why collaboration is important is because whatever analysis or whatever data you are getting, it's not only for you, right? There will be different uh, like there are different stages where data is actually processed down. You're processing down the data in order to have a metrics understanding. But then there are different roles, just like data scientists and data engineers, that will be too working on that data, right? So instead they being processing and collecting down the data, you have actually done their job easy, right? Because data science is divided into different fields, just like data analysts, data scientists, data engineers, right? So if you have done a certain amount of processing on the data, now that data is in the usable form for it to get explored in different directions. What I mean by this is to get explored, right? Now you have analyzed down the data, you have certain metrics understanding. Now there are data scientists, and what do they do is they can actually collect down the data, whatever you have collected and cleaned, and they can use the data to train certain models. Now in this world of GPT, right, we are aware that there are very good models available, and we can build down those models in order to have a predictions, in order to have a future understanding, right? So if this is the level of, if this is the rate how customers visits are increasing, what will be the rate in the future, right? So these are the algorithms that are implemented or that are used, but the crux is the data. That data is responsible to train down the algorithm in a way so that it can predict the future trends. So that's why if a data analyst role is to collect down and clean down the data, the collaboration also becomes very important. So different members across the organization can actually utilize that source of data which you have built upon, right? So these are the different key points involving a data analyst role. And again, we'll be going one by one into each of them to actually have a deeper understanding, right? Exactly how they are important at an organization. Now, the first thing is the data collection. Now, I was telling you about the collecting the data from different sources, right? Now, the most important thing is, okay, you have to collect down the data, but even before that, you have to identify the data, right? You have to identify the data sources, right? So you have a certain problem statement in hand. Okay, you have to, again, I'll be taking the same example just for the easy reference, right? You have a shopping stores at different zones, and you have to collect down the data. Now, what are the data sources? So when we say that what are the data sources, we need to identify the data sources. So few of the examples I have just jotted down here for you guys is there are two types of sources at a very broader level. So there can be n number of sources depending upon the field that we are dealing with. But at a very broader level, there are internal and external sources. Now, the internal sources involves data getting stored in databases, Excel spreadsheet, etc. Now, Excel spreadsheet, we all are aware. We all have worked upon Microsoft Excel, right? So there are spreadsheets that are there, and we can actually uh, enter, or we can say that we can actually jot down the data very easily because it is in the form of spreadsheets where you can write down columns, you can have numerical figures or even string values, right? So those spreadsheets are important to record down the data. So recording becomes very easy in Excel spreadsheet. So that is definitely one of the internal sources. And then the second source is the database. So databases, if you guys are not aware, will be going a bit into SQL, but at again at a very higher level, databases are actually responsible for storing down your all of your structured data because they have mechanism to store that data in the form that is best utilized, that can be best utilized, right? So that's why that is important, right? Now this is internal sources that we were talking about. Now there are external sources. So when I talk about external sources, there are APIs, there are public data sets. So if you go through World Wide Web, there are many of the public data sets that are available and you can actually utilize them, right? The public data sets are there for you to use. There are APIs. Actually, you can consume in the APIs and pull down the data. So there are those open source APIs which we say you can actually hit the API, and those are the API that we say the HTTP request, right? You can hit down the APIs, you can collect down the data. These are open source. And the final thing is the web scraping, right? Now, web scraping is actually scrapping down the World Wide Web to get down the information, right? So web scraping is all about scrapping down the data from the websites in order to accumulate down, in order to jot down all of the data. So this involves certain techniques or certain mechanism which you can easily implement through programming languages, right? You can some of the simplest example I can say here is the Python, right? You have so many web scraping frameworks, you can exactly implement it and have that mechanism to pull down the data from any website, right? So that's why these are all the external sources, right? So as soon as you identify the data, so you know that, okay, I have three sources of data. Now, the second thing that we talk about is the data acquisition. What do I mean by data acquisition is actually the data collection, right? You have to acquire the data. You have to pull down the data. Now, again, for pulling down the data, there are two kinds of things. Just like in data sources, we have internal and external sources. So data acquisition also can be done in various forms, right? Now, we know that there are certain tools already available or already built for us that are almost like no code kind of platforms. Okay, you can actually configure them in a way to pull down the complete data. So these are the automated processes that we say. Okay, the automated processes is one of the things is you can exactly build down from the scratch. You can write down certain codes or write down certain scripts so that it will definitely interact with the database, pull down the data and store the data in a suitable format. But the second thing is the manual process. So though the manual process is not very idle, but it's still one of the most possible ways of the data acquisition that we say about, okay, there is a data, you need to download the file. So you need to go on the website, you need to click on the download, the file will be downloaded, and then you can open the file and, okay, do any sort of calculation that you want, right? The manual process, downloading files, then conducting surveys, right? You see people around in the in malls also, right? There are people around you. Okay, we collect this source of information, etc. These are the surveys that are, or you see when you're visiting online, there are certain surveys that are there, right? The mandatory surveys. Okay, you have to give down certain details in order to proceed further. These are all the kind of online service that they are doing in order to again collect down the data for different problems that we have, right? Now we have identified data sources. We know about the data acquisition. Now comes the data integration. Now you have seen that, okay, this is a possible data source. Then I can acquire down the data. But third thing is the data integration, where we see to merge down the data. Why? Because if there are more than one sources, then we cannot say that all of the sources will store the information in the required format, right? So taking the same example, okay, the Mumbai store is storing down the customer data and the Bangalore store is also storing down. But there can be certain figures that only Mumbai store is recording and Bangalore is not. Or there can be a problem where, okay, the customer ID is string in Bangalore store, but in the other store they have taken int. Now these are the data types that I'm talking about. The customer ID can be string, can be int. So this is something related to, if you have to merge down the data, you need to have consistent data, right? That is again important. If you are merging down the data, if you have, okay, you have data from four stores, you need to have the consistent data so that you can merge down the data, entirely merge down, or what we are saying, accumulate down the data, right? So as you can analyze the data further. So that is where when we come across, when we say that, okay, data integration, right? Integrating down the data. So that these are all the parts of the processes of data collection, right? Now we go to the second step that we were talking. Okay, we already knew that, okay, data cleaning will be a part as soon as we have the data. But how important is data cleaning? Now, guys, this is one of the most important roles when you're working as a data analyst, right? Because you collect down the data, but data is not every time in the most ideal format to use. Now, what do I mean by idle format is all of the things will be up to date. The data is complete. There is no missing values. There is no duplicate records. All of the things are in a way that, okay, you can consume down the data and you can get down the figures. But this doesn't happen in a real life world cases, right? In real life cases, we have the data where there are certain errors. Okay, and that is possible, right? Because if we are humans, right? We always can do or commit mistakes, right? While we are doing surveys or we are recording down the data, there can be possible errors, right? Now, in order to handle all of those scenarios, there is a process called data cleaning, right? Now, data cleaning is again one of the most important of the building blocks of data analyst roles because they have to actually clean down the data so that the data becomes absolutely perfect for the further use. What I mean by perfect, absolutely perfect is all those missing data, all those duplicate, all those transformation that we need to apply, we are applying them. Now we'll go one by one and try to understand some of the basic data cleaning steps, right? You get an idea why data cleaning is such important because data cleaning, okay, you know that okay, it will have errors, but what kind of things that a data can have it. Now, one of the most common thing that we know is actually handling down missing data. So there are approaches. There are n number of approaches to be honest to handle those missing data. But whenever a data is missing in a certain column, the most common approach is okay. If there is a missing data, okay, I will delete that customer record. Yes, this is possible again, but it has certain cons with it. Why? Suppose I've given you less data, and now whenever there is a data missing, you're deleting down the record. What will happen? Your data will become less, and you cannot afford this, right? Because you need more and more data for actually getting down the correct metric. But if you're deleting down the data, that means you are actually reducing the size of the data. If you reduce the size of the data, you may or may not get the accurate metric that you are targeting, right? That's why deletion is always not the most ideal kind of approach. But if you have very large data, then these sort of approaches can actually be useful. And they are less time taking. We know that, right? Then the second kind of approach you can handle here is imputation. What I mean by imputation is a term that talks about filling the missing data. Now, how can you fill it, right? There can be again many approaches in order to fill it, but the most common kind of approach is okay, take the mean of the column. Mean, I mean by okay, the average price. Okay, one of the customer actually forgot to write the price, right? You take down the average price in that category and you impute it, right? So there are again many approaches. The imputation is a technique where you try to fill in the data. Now to fill in the data, there can be many approaches again, but you will not delete it, you will fill the data, right? So this is one of the most common thing where I say that, okay, handling down the missing data. Then removing duplicates. This we all know. Maybe a customer feedback is recorded more than one time, right? Or while imputation or while actually recording down, if you have repeated down the same customer entry twice or thrice, it doesn't help, right? So you will try to delete the data because if you try to have those duplicate sort of data, maybe that can lead you to a wrong metric, right? Again, removing duplicates, correcting errors. Now, what do you mean by correcting errors is there can be outliers. There can be like while actually recording down the data, I have not missed down the data, but I have what I've done is I've recorded a wrong figure. Now it's easy, right? You're writing 20, you can easily write 200 and store it. But when you get out the data, when you get the entire data and you see that, okay, the average price was 56 and the highest price was 100 for that product. How can it be 200, right? It isn't possible. It isn't possible in real life case, right? Because all of the price, we know the maximum price of the product was 100. How could it be 200? So maybe we have actually missed on the trick to record the data in a correct format. And those are the outliers. Outliers can be n number of things, but it's very important to remove those outliers before you analyze down the data, right? And then after correcting errors, one of the most important steps, and one of the most important steps, why I say put that emphasis is the data transformation is the key, right? Data transformation involves many processes where you actually aggregate down the data, you normalize the data, or you put down the data in a format that the next step is okay, you can exactly visualize the data, or you can have certain operations in order to understand the metrics, or in order to draw or report down various pie charts, line charts, and all of those figures, right? So that's why data transformation is the key to your data cleaning process. Yes, definitely before transformation, you need to apply many more processes, but after transformation, you can exactly get down many things. So what I mean by normalization, aggregation, guys, aggregation is very common. You must have heard about, okay, I want to aggregate the data. What I mean by aggregate is, so certainly if we have customer data, right, I need to understand, okay, what are the buyers for customer products? So I have 5 products in my store, and I want to see how many times that product is actually purchased. So aggregate down the data in a way that you say that, okay, group down my data by the product and see the count of customers purchasing this product. And that way, okay, my topmost selling product is this because many of the customers are purchasing it, right? So this is one of the most simplest example I've given you about the data aggregation. There is much more to it, right? Now, normalization, why do we normalize the data? Normalize of the data is very important. So you can consume down the data in most easy form, or you're converting down the complex thing into a very simpler form. Normalize is generally a process when the data has indefinite boundaries, right? Like the data figures can be anywhere in the range, and you try to normalize the range between a certain A to B range, right? So this is important when you do the when you do the further modeling stuff, or further when you want to model the data, or when you want to consume the data and you have very large amount of data, then normalization is a key so that it requires less computation power too, right? While doing these all sort of modeling. Then we talk about the data validation. Now, data validation is again important step. Why? Because you want to have a check on the data. You have cleaned down the data, but there are certain checks you need to apply as you know from where you have aggregated, from where you have got down the data. So you have certain information about the data because whenever guys you are working on a problem statement, you are collecting down the data. You certainly know some background, right? Okay, what the data is, what exactly data talks about. So data validation is important because just like I told you about, okay, my customer ID will be an integer. So all of stores are maintaining integers, but there was a certain record which has string in it. Now, how come it has string in it? So these are the kinds of things that can come out on the data validation. So post cleaning stuff, we can apply data validation in order to have checks on certain data, right? Now, data cleaning we have discussed. Now we'll come down to the most interesting part here, right? We know we have to manipulate the data. We know we have to transform, we have to collect down the data, but how exactly can you do it, right? So for data analyst roles, there are certain tools and techniques that are very important for you, right? One of the most important, most heard about thing is SQL, structured query language, right? This is one of the most important thing for data analysts to have expertise on because there are many scenarios where we are recording down the data in SQL, right? Structured query language. This is the database, right? So if you are recording down the data, if you are storing down the data in SQL, then you need to have appropriate knowledge, right, of the SQL. It's again a structured query language, right? A programming language where you need to understand certain syntax. It has its own syntax in order to query the data, store the data, manipulate the data. So SQL is one of the most important things that we'll be talking about. Then is the Python, right? Python is one of the most profound programming language that you guys must have heard about. If not, then yes, Python is a scripting language in which actually you can code down certain stuff, right? You can script down certain things in order to automate the processes. So there is a thing called a manual process. You have to open the Excel file, you have to read down certain data, and then you want to store the data in a certain folder, right? This all of the process is manual, but in order to automate this, Python can be one of your go-to language where you can automatically read data from a certain location. You can read down certain column, you can apply some logic on it, and you can save down the data. So Python will be very useful for you. And then the ETL tools. What I mean by ETL is extract, transform, load. So these are the pipelines that can actually manage this data collection and data cleaning or data transformation stuff for you. Now, one of the thing is you certainly write down the scripts and all of those stuff, but as we talk about in the world of clouds, like we have Microsoft, we have Azure, we have AWS, we have Google, right? All of those clouds are supporting some of the automation tools. And these ETL tools can be very important for you just because if you have the right knowledge on those tools, you can automate all of these stuff, the data collection. But certainly the knowledge will be required because you need to have hands-on expertise on these tools, right? People ask for experience on these tools so that you can actually automate these tasks of data collection and data transformation. So you can design pipelines in there. So if you have certain things, right, you want to do cleaning, you want to do the apply transformation, you want to store the data in SQL. So one of the thing is, yeah, doing this by certain scripts and all of maintaining all of those things. But the second thing is, in order to automate all of these, you can design pipelines. So pipelines are just the sequence of steps. You can declare sequence of steps. You can actually like some of these are almost low code kind of platform, but you need to have knowledge in order to configure these, right? So you have to pull down the data from a source, you have to apply certain logic, and then you have to push down the data to source speed. So these kinds of automation or these kinds of pipeline designing can be done through ETL tools. And ETL tools are, you can have Azure Data Factory. You want to just write down, you guys can write down Azure Data Factory, AWS Glue, and Hadoop. And all of those tools are already there in the market. Apache Airflow is one of the most, again, one of the most famous tools, again, for these stuff. And you can have some knowledge or you can have some hands-on on these tools in order to understand how they work. And they are exactly the go-to tools for the pipeline designing, right? The ETL pipelines. Okay. So before even commencing about the SQL and in order to understand how SQL will be important, it's important that you guys may have a proper roadmap, right? Like while you're having a career transition, you need to have the right knowledge. You have to have the right mentorship, right? Because you need to design a certain path for you, right? You need to have certain path. Okay, what are the things that I need to cover? What will be the most important thing that I need to have in order to have my career transition successful? Because career transition, yes, it's one of the most possible thing. And here there are many people who have exactly done this, right? But you need to have a proper career roadmap for this. And I think for this, the team is already here who can actually guide you for this, right? In order to have a right mentorship program. There are different programs here, right? You can enroll in that. You can have a look at it. Okay, how the mentorship works, how the mentorship can exactly be fruitful because there are experienced people, right? The experienced folks talking to you about your career transition, how to handle this. Okay. So these are the most important things. And I guess there would be surveys shared with you, so it's important for you guys to fill up that survey in order to know, in order for the team to know actually have that data with them in order to understand, okay, how many of you guys are looking for a career transition and how they can assist you. So please have a look at it, look at that form. Maybe that will be shared in the chat and you guys can fill out that form. You can maybe take 1 or 2 minutes if you want. In the meanwhile, I can also take a break, 1 or 2 minutes break, right? And fill out that form. So team gets an idea, right? How many of you are looking for exactly what kind of solution mentorship programs or the roadmap building. So you can be actually guided accordingly, right? And in the end, there will be team talking to you, I guess, right? So you can have an interaction with them. You can have a deeper insights into the programs and much more. But yes, there is much more to the session. So we'll be going by that. But yes, if there are any forms to be filled, you guys can fill down. In the meanwhile, like I'll just take a minute or two. Uh, yes, I'll just take a minute.
Yeah, the form is in the chat box. You guys can fill it up if you want to understand how data analytics job bootcamp can help you. It's a 6-month program with placement assistance till first job, and filling this form up will help you get a call back from our team, our seasoned experts who will help you with the roadmap to if like what could be the ideal roadmap as per your profile, and how coding ninja's job bootcamp aligns with that. You will also explore exclusive scholarship on that we have. So you can fill it up, and we'll start resume the session in 1 more minute. Yeah, Anuj, I think we can now resume the session.
Oh, sure. Mhm. Okay. So, I guess my screen is shared, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So we were having a look at, we have understood, okay, what are the data collection, what are the data cleaning, or what are the data transformation steps that we need to do. But then the most important part that I was talking about is the SQL, right? The structured query language. So we'll go a bit insight into a SQL, like what exactly SQL is. So you guys have an idea, right? How SQL is important to data analyst roles, right? Structured query language, it's actually a programming language that is used for storing and processing information, right? Now, when we talk about SQL, we talk about relational databases. What do I mean by relational databases? So in SQL, you can have different tables, right? You can create tables of different schemas and you can relate them, right? So if I have a customer database, I won't prefer creating down a single table with all those columns, right? What I will do is I will create down different table. I will design schema. So there are different forms of schema building. You can go star schema, you have different schemas that you can build down. But at a very naive level, what you can do is you can have two or three tables, and those are linked between each other, so that the information is stored in a much more relational form and much more usable form. As of now, maybe you guys will have difficult understanding why relational databases are very much important. But yes, when you will be working on it, you will see that why the SQL is one of the most go-to thing for any relational stuff, right? Any structured data will be storing down in SQL. SQL is that much important, right? Now, the relational data stores information in tabular form with rows and columns, as we have talked about, right? Those are tables, right? Tables will have rows and tables will have columns. Columns indicate, okay, what will the column type, what kind of values this column will have, and rows will have certain information, right? Now, SQL is extensively used in data analysis. I've already told you about like data analysis involved data cleaning, data transformation. Now, if you want to apply all of these things, you need to have data in a certain appropriate format stored somewhere, right? SQL is again the go-to tool for storing down the data so that you can pull down the data, you can analyze down the data, and you can again save down the data in SQL. That is how the process of it can be to and fro, right? And whenever your data is stored in SQL, it's stored in the relation form. So you can use it to extract insights, right? So you can pull down the data whenever you want. You can apply certain transformation. You can display certain figures. And one of the most important thing here is SQL can be connected to various tools. You'll be going through some of the data visualization tools just like Power BI. Power BI, if you guys have heard about, it is one of the most profound tools in data analysis where you can easily integrate different data sources and you could pull out some amazing metrics and some amazing figures, and it automatically does that. Yeah, you can configure the data so you can define, okay, I need this field to be in x-axis, I need this field to be y-axis, and your graph will be automatically plotted. You do not even need to code it down. That's how Power BI is again one of the most profound tools in data visualization. Again, there can be many more tools that will be coming up, but yeah, Power BI is just one of the example that I've given you that can be connected with SQL also, right? Now, if we talk about SQL skills, we will not be going very deep into it as we do not have that much amount of time, and maybe in the more deeper transition program that you will have, this will be one of the most important topics that we'll be going through. But yes, on a very outset, SQL skills is basically divided into like the basic SQL, the intermediate, then come the advanced, then come the practical usage. So these are the different levels where you will understand, okay, the basic SQL will involve about, okay, what are the different data types? What are the basic queries you can do? What is the basic filtering you can apply? Because if you're storing down the data in a tabular form with rows and columns, you have to have the right knowledge of the syntax in order to pull down the data. So just like if there is a table that stores the employee data, if I want to pull down the data, there is a certain syntax that is there in the SQL that, okay, you have to use select statements. Okay, select statements exactly select down the number of columns that you want to select from an appropriate table. So it's like if I want to select customer ID, right? Select customer ID from the table name. So that is how the syntax is there for the SQL. So in this way, there are many more syntaxes, right? And when we go one level above in SQL, then we can have, as I told you about the data in SQL is a relational data. It's stored down in different tables and tables are connected, right? There are conventions just like primary key, foreign key. In that way, tables are related. So you have the joins in SQL where exactly you can accumulate down the data from different tables and you can bring out a final output in front of the end user. You have the table data stored in different tables, but when it is presented to the customer or when it is presented to the end user, you are actually joining down these tables to collect down the data, right? So then we go one more advanced level where we have common table expression, we have stored procedures, we have functions, there's many more to it. So SQL is one of the most things that has many more concepts, but again, it is one of the most interesting things. Why? Because the data analysis becomes very easy with SQL, right? So now the practical usage, right? We know what is SQL, but it is important to have the real world cases, right? The real world scenarios where actually in SQL we have the data stored and you want to utilize the data, right? So practical real world scenarios, the ETL pipelines design, all of them can be done to SQL, right? Now, as we talk about SQL levels, we talk about the SQL users. So it's again gettable from all the things I've talked about. That data can be retrieved in SQLs. You have filters, you have aggregations, you have cleaning, you have transformation, and then you have reporting and visualization also. This is also possible in SQL. You can report and visualize the data. But then again, there are much more advanced tools coming up where you can integrate SQL with them. But yes, again, SQL also have its own visualization where you can visualize the data. So these are different uses of SQL. Like this is one of the example that I've just quoted. So this is the data. This is just a dummy data of maybe a banking department storing the salaries of employee. This is how a table schema would be designed in SQL, right? And it will be stored. So a table name would be employee, and this is how data would be stored in SQL. And this is exactly the schema you can build down in SQL, and you can have date. So you can have different columns, employee ID, first name, last name. The convention you can follow, but the convention are according to the paradigms that are there for the SQL, right? So then there is a joining date. All of them is different data type. You understand department is string, right? So in SQL we say string as varchar, right? Joining date is date. It's a date type, right? You cannot store integer here. You cannot store string here, right? That's why data types are important. That is the first level of the knowledge that you get about SQL. First name, employee ID is an integer. So that is how the data is stored. And then we talk about some of the examples that I was talking about. The certain syntax, right? If you want to select particular name, if you want to select all of the records and select star from employee, right? These are very named, these are very basic guys, but there is much more to it where you can do with this, right? These are the building blocks of SQL. If you get a knowledge of how to utilize SQL in certain format, you can do wonders with the data. Trust me. Okay, so these are some of the common examples. Now, when I talk about SQL, I talk about the various data visualization tools, and one of them I've definitely talked about is the Power BI, right? Now, along with Power BI, there is again one of the tools called Tableau, right? Where you can exactly do various manipulation with the data and you can visualize the data in a way that it becomes very intuitive for the end user to understand it, right? Now, because not every person is very much technical enough to actually go into the depth of the data, to get deep into the data, right? For them, what matters to it, whatever you are displaying down or whatever you are displaying on the data in the accurate figure on accurate format, right? For them, you need to have knowledge of data visualization tools, right? But data visualization tools is again very much important if you are just targeting for the data analyst roles. Then creating dashboards. If you will have an understanding of data visualization tools, then this creating dashboard reports and data storytelling is very easy, right? Because if you have the data, you have analyzed the data, you can actually tell about the data, right? That's why data storytelling is again very one of the most maybe underrated, but one of the most very key aspect of data analyst roles because you need to be expert so that you can make the end user understand the data in a way that you have actually processed it, right? Because you have got down the data, you have processed down the data, but yes, you need to have that skill of data storytelling so that you can actually realize down those metrics. Okay, how you have come down to certain metrics from that data, right? So that's why data storytelling is important. Creating dashboard reports you can easily create, right? Now the basic statistics and probability. Yes, again, if you're dealing down with the data, you need to have certain stats and props concepts familiar with you guys, right? It can't be the case that you do not know about mean, median, mode. These are some of the basic things. Okay, what the probability distribution of the data. So these are some of the basic things when you're working with qualitative or quantitative data. You need to have an understanding, right? How the basic stats approaches can be applied on the data, because not everything can be performed through aggregation or transfer. Certain things or certain metrics can easily be calculated through the basic statistics and probability. So that's why this level of knowledge is also very important. Then we have Excel, right? We all have worked on Microsoft Excel. There are certain concepts in Excel, right? You're storing down the data in spreadsheets. There are certain concepts just like VLOOKUP, HLOOKUP, pivot tables. These are some of the common. It's not only only targeting these three things, but it's just an reference for you guys that Excel is also one of the most important things while you're storing down the data, because it's not every time you're storing down data in Excel. Some of the data is already in Excel. If you want to analyze the data, then these approaches are your go-to approaches for analyzing data. It's very quick in Excel, right? Then programming language, yes, Python is one of the most preferred language, but it's not that only Python can do this stuff. There is a language called R. You can heard about that language. It's also one of the most uh, famous programming language while we do the data analysis stuff. But yes, why Python is more preferred, because yeah, it's open source. You can easily get down certain things or certain errors that you will be facing, right? And there are many more frameworks that are coming down in Python, which makes your job very easy, right? So Python, again, the most go-to language for from the programming perspective. And then all the soft skills, right? If you are analyzing down the data, you need to present down the data. You need to have certain communication of the problem skills, right? So these are the all the kind of additional skills that you add, right? If not more, then yes. Just closing down this session, guys, with the most uh, one of the most interesting thing, right? What will be the kind of things you can expect down when you're preparing down the resumes, right? You need to understand the job roles and responsibilities whenever you're applying down for data analyst roles. What is exactly the organization requires? Okay, so go down to job roles and responsibilities and try to see what makes you stand out when you are applying down for data analyst roles, right? Good project is key, right? Good projects demonstrate that, okay, you have the knowledge, but how you actually apply down that knowledge in the real life case, right? If there is a real life case studies going on, right? If you understand the data, if you understand the concepts, then you can apply down the same concept on the real life cases, real life scenarios, and then have good projects on them. So again, projects is important. Strong SQL concept we've already talked about. Data visualization tool we have talked about. Power BI, Tableau. You need to have. It's not like every data visualization tool you need to know. No, one of the tools can also do wonders for you, right? Good to have basic knowledge of Excel, right? Because Excel is, again, there are some source of data that are stored in Excel, so you need to have. Then good in-depth understanding of the use cases, the use case that you are implementing, some of the use case that is given to you. You have to realize down the requirement. Okay, what is exactly the requirement of the data that I need to understand? Then from the data metrics understanding, right? I talked to you about some of the metrics, customer satisfaction rate, right? And this is one of the metrics when we talk about the customer data, right? There are many more metrics, right? You need to understand. As per the use case, the metrics will be different, but how each of the metrics is important in defining down the problem for you, right? In defining down the solution to the problem, not exactly the problem, right? Critical thinking, yes, you need to have, right? Definitely. When you're working with the data, you need to have a good critical thinking, right? And then collaboration and communication. This is we have discussed about that. Whatever you are doing, the same source of data can be utilized by different peers in your organization. You need to have that good collaboration and communication so that data can be utilized in the most efficient way, right?
Thank you everyone for watching. If you found this helpful, check out the link in the description for more such masterclasses.